Everybody wants to be a landlord until they actually are one. The idea sounds simple enough. You buy a property, you rent it out, you collect that check, and you build that wealth. What nobody told you before you sign the closing documents is what's going to come after that. That 11 p.m. call about a leak, the tenant who stops paying at month 4, the repair bill that shows up the same week the water heater quits. I'm not here to talk you out of being a landlord. I'm here to make sure you walk into this with your eyes open because the investors who last in this business are the ones who understand the trade-offs. Do me a favor, help me out with the algorithm, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so that you don't miss everything that I put out. If you're new to the channel, my name is Bud Evans. I'm a 35-year military veteran, 13-year law enforcement officer. I was the mayor of Sentiments in New Jersey. I'm a current real estate investor focused on single-family and small multifamily properties. I mentor veterans in real estate, and I founded a low-cost, investor-focused property management company in South Jersey. I've made a lot of mistakes in this business, and I paid for them. What I teach comes from that. Here's the picture most people have when they decide to become a landlord. They see the income side. Rent comes in every month. The tenant is basically paying the mortgage. The property appreciates over time. Equity builds. They'll probably retire on this. That picture's not wrong. Those things do happen, but that picture is incomplete. And the part that gets left out is what separates investors with real portfolios from investors who sell their first property in a year or two and swear off real estate for the rest of their lives. The problem is here that most landlords underestimate what the job actually requires, not just the money, the decisions, the systems, the legal exposure, the tenant relationships, the maintenance coordination, the accounting, the emotional weight of managing someone else's home. When those demands show up, and they will, investors who aren't prepared for them take reactive actions. They drop below market rent to avoid vacancy that they're scared of. They let maintenance slide because they don't want to spend the money. They avoid difficult conversations with tenants until some small problem becomes a legal one. Every one of those reactive decisions costs more money than the proactive decision probably would have. The conflict hits harder in year one. A new landlord places a tenant, everything looks fine, then one thing goes sideways. The tenant pays late, or the tenant stops paying entirely. The landlord doesn't know the eviction process. They don't know their state's notice requirements. They let months go hoping that the situation just is going to resolve itself because the eviction process feels a little overwhelming, and they don't want to be confrontation. Meanwhile, you're still paying the mortgage, the taxes, and the insurance, and the property is generating nothing. By the time you file, there are 3 to 5 months behind on rent, and legal fees are tacking up on top of it. That moment is where most new landlords decide that this business is not for them. And the honest truth is that it's not the business that killed them. The preparation killed them. They walked in knowing the upside and not knowing the operating requirements. That's a training problem. That's not a real estate problem. So you need to stop treating the property like a passive investment and start treating it like it's a small business, because it is. It's a business that owns real property. It provides a housing service to a customer, manages a physical asset, and operates inside legal framework that's going to vary state by state and by municipality by municipality. When you approach it like a business and you build business systems and you screen tenants with discipline and you document everything, you know your local landlord-tenant law, you respond to maintenance fast because you understand it protects the asset. You enforce lease terms consistently because inconsistency creates more legal exposure. That shift in mindset, that changes everything about how the business is going to perform. Listen, if you're a veteran who wants to be around other serious investors working through the same decisions, look into the War Room with David ḥǒř. It's a veteran-focused real estate community, and it's built for people who want real answers and not hype. If you want to work through your specific situation directly, find me at budevans.com. I do one-offs. I don't sell a program. But both links are in the description below. Let's go through both sides of this honestly. The real advantages of being a landlord start with reoccurring income. When the property's occupied and performing, it's great. It generates cash every single month without requiring you to show up at a job. That income doesn't stop when you take leave. It doesn't stop when you're sick. It doesn't require you to have active presence to produce. And for vets and first responders who have spent careers trading time for money, that shift is significant. Rental income is one of the few income streams that can run in the background while you're doing something else. The second advantage here is leverage. Real estate is one of the only asset classes where a bank will lend you 80% or more of the purchase price at a fixed rate over a long term. You put in 20% and you control 100% of the asset, and you can write off 100% of the depreciation, and 100% of the income it produces you get. So when the property appreciates, you gain on the full value, not just your down payment. That leverage, when you use it responsibly, accelerates wealth building in a way that most other investment vehicles just can't match. The third advantage here is the tax treatment. Depreciation is a non-cash deduction that reduces your taxable income from the property. The mortgage interest is also tax deductible. Repairs and maintenance is also tax deductible. Management fees, also tax deductible. Your vehicle mileage for property visits, also tax deductible. And for investors in higher income brackets, the efficiency of rental real estate, it's one of the most underappreciated benefits. Talk to a CPA who specializes in real estate before you file. The deductions available to landlords are real and they matter. The fourth advantage is equity accumulation. Every mortgage payment your tenant makes is paying down your principal balance on your loan. Over time, as rents increase and the loan balance decreases, the property's equity position gets stronger. That equity is a financial asset that you can leverage and refinance against or realize when you sell. For veterans thinking about long-term financial security, a paid-off rental property is one of the cleanest paths to durable income in retirement. Let's talk about the disadvantages now because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. I'm going to be direct because sugarcoating does not help anybody. The first disadvantage here is tenants. You can screen tenants carefully and still end up with a turd. People's circumstances change, job losses, divorce, health issues, substance problems. Any of those can turn a good tenant into a non-paying tenant faster than you expect. We just had somebody who went to jail. And once a tenant stops paying, your path to resolution runs through the legal system, which is slow. It varies significantly by state, and which jurisdiction is heavily weighted towards tenant protections, regardless of whether or not the tenant is right or not. You need to understand your state's eviction process before you place your first tenant, not after all of the problems start. The second disadvantage is maintenance and repair demand. The property will require maintenance. That's not a risk, that's a certainty. The roof, the HVAC, the plumbing, appliances, structure itself, things break and they require attention, money, coordination, and if you self-manage, that coordination falls on you directly. If you're a property manager, you're paying for that layer and you still need to be close enough to the numbers to catch problems. Either way, the maintenance burden is a real thing and it's ongoing as long as you own the property. The third disadvantage here is liquidity. Real estate is not a liquid asset. If you need cash quickly, you cannot sell a rental property in 48 hours at the full market value. That's just not going to happen. The sales process takes time, usually 30 to 60 days. Closing takes time. The market is soft. It takes even longer. Investors who tie up their last available capital in real estate and then face unexpected financial need are in a difficult position. You need operating capital, emergency reserves that separate you from your real estate holdings before you buy your first property. This is not an option. The fourth disadvantage here is legal exposure. As a landlord, you operate inside of a framework, federal, state, and local laws. Fair housing requirements are going to govern how you screen and communicate with applicants. State law is going to govern your lease terms, your security deposit handling, your entry notice requirements, and the eviction process. Local ordinances might impose additional requirements. Violations, even unintentional ones, can result in fines, lawsuits, or loss of the ability to even collect rent. You don't need to be a lawyer here. You need to know the basic rules that apply to your specific market. Here's the fifth disadvantage: time. Self-managing a property takes time. Fielding calls, coordinating repairs, handling tenant issues, processing applications, managing move-ins and move-outs. Some investors underestimate this significantly and then resent the time that the property actually takes. If your time is already constrained, build the cost of professional management into your analysis from the start. Don't just assume that you'll self-manage indefinitely and then discover you can't sustain it. Look, once you get everything set up, it really doesn't take that much. But here's a real-world example I want to use when I work with veterans considering their first property. Two investors buy identical single-family rentals with the same zip code, the same price, the same down payment. Investor one goes in with a lease template that they found online, no screening criteria written down, and no knowledge of local landlord-tenant law, and a plan to figure things out as they go. Investor two spends 2 weeks before closing learning state eviction processes, drafts a written agreement, screening criteria document. They have a local real estate attorney review their lease, and then they set up a dedicated bank account for the property before the first tenant even moves in. 12 months later, investor one is dealing with a problem tenant that they don't know how to get out, and the property doesn't have cash flow for 4 months or so. Investor two is 6 months into a solid tenancy with a maintenance reserve growing in his separate account. Same property, same market, different prep. That's the difference between landlording as a grind and landlording as a business. Here, as always, is an execution checklist. You can use this before you acquire your first property. First, research your state's landlord-tenant law before you buy, specifically the eviction process and the notice requirements. Next, write a written tenant screening criteria document that applies consistently to every applicant and keep it on file. Next, have a local real estate attorney review your lease before you actually use it on a real tenant. Open a dedicated bank account for the property before the first tenant moves in. Keep operating funds and reserves separate. Next, build a full expense budget that includes taxes, insurance, management, maintenance, capital expense reserves, and vacancy. Don't run your numbers on rent minus mortgage. You're already upside down if you do that. Establish a response standard for maintenance requests before you place a tenant. Define what qualifies as an emergency and how you're supposed to handle it. Next, document everything in writing. Lease agreements, move-in inspections, maintenance requests, communications with tenants. Paper trails protect you legally. Driveway conversations aren't real. Identify at least one real estate attorney and a CPA who specializes in real estate before you close on your first property. Next, evaluate property management honestly. If you have limited time or your property is not close to you, build management costs into your underwriting from day one. Next, review your performance quarterly. Actual income versus projected income. Actual expenses versus projected. Adjust your reserves and strategy based on what the numbers show. All right. If this video was useful, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next video, and share with as many of your friends as you can. That's how you help this content reach the people who really need it. Thanks for watching. I'm Bud Evans. Aim high, execute fast. See you on the next one.